across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting UnderTheHoodShow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us here. Welcome to Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
Thank you, automakers, for raising prices across the board on everything again. But it's not their fault, right? Everybody else is raising prices. It's inflation, but we're just telling you, if you thought you were going to buy a vehicle and you were just waiting for more to come out, so you waited to pay for it, well, now you're going to pay more. Yikes. It's just never ending, isn't it?
Sounds personal.
No, I'm not buying one.
It does seem, yeah.
I'm good to go.
It is crazy. I mean, we're getting consistent increases from our suppliers. I know one of the big remanufacturers we get stuff from, they just put a big surcharge on their freight, and how can you not? I mean, the freight costs have went up considerably when you start putting, if you're coming from the West Coast and you're dumping in $7 diesel fuel to get part of your journey going, and then you put $6 diesel fuel as you get a little further, and then you eventually get to $5 diesel fuel, you're still twice what it was, or not twice, but I mean, close.
Pretty close.
To what it was a year ago. Big change, and so it affects everything. And I think the other thing that people forget, and I'm not sitting here trying to push one way or the other on any political agenda, but the things that we consume on a daily basis, the number of things that are created with petroleum products, I think is something that people forget about.
Everything.
It's in so many things that we use on a daily basis to make the resins and the plastics and the everything else.
Shannon, did you know?
Probably not.
You probably do, if you remember, when we took a tour of the Poet Energy plant here in Sioux Falls. Ethanol people, for though you don't know what that name means, but Poet's been around, biofuels has been around for a while, but they had a bunch of stuff in there. They had plastic bottles, and they had all these different skincare products, all this sorts of stuff. And I was like, what's all that stuff for? And they said, well, did you know that anything that can be made out of petroleum can be made out of corn, biofuel, grass?
I do remember that down in
beets.
their lab area we talked about that.
Yeah, they were using all these, and not just corn, it was all sorts of stuff, and that was kind of intriguing to see. And I'm thinking, boy, if you're putting, like lip balm, you're putting that on, you're thinking, oh, that's made out of crude oil. Wouldn't you rather it be made out of corn or soybeans or grass or something like that? Hemp, whatever they use to make it.
Hey, you might be onto something with that last one.
Yeah, label it that, and everybody will buy it.
Everything he said so far has made me cringe. Worried.
There you go.
Fallout.
Well, it is quite a change, but I guess I was trying to think back the other day, and you realize you're getting older when you start naming all the presidents you can think of that have affected your life while you've been, there. And I go all the way back to Ford. So I'm thinking in my head, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, and then Clinton, and then Bush Jr., and then Obama, and then Trump.
Look at him go.
And Biden. Those are my presidents. But in my head, I can think of, okay, I'm lost between Nixon and Ford because I was too young. Talking to younger generations in our shop, they remember just Trump. They don't go back further than that because they were not thinking
engaged as much.
Well, they didn't have anything.
My
to
son
think
always
about.
says, before I was a person.
Yeah,
Like
there,
when he was
there
13,
you go.
he thinks that's when he
before the
came
Before he was a
online.
person?
Yeah.
So
So,
like AP or BP before person.
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
So you can probably relate what's going on with cost to what you can remember for presidents. Because if I go all the way back, I can remember, okay, I remember gas prices were high. I remember, there were tensions and things like that that affected prices. But before I really worried about presidents, I didn't worry about prices. I just went and paid and went, oh, that's expensive.
If you want to end the show, you could just resign. You don't have to shut us down by all of your topics today.
I don't have any opinions. I just kind of relating what goes where. But if we look back on this show, how many times have we talked about fuel going up for whatever reason and fuel going down? And Chris, you'd say, well, here goes the market for new SUVs.
Right.
Nobody's going to buy them because the prices are high. And the fuel prices stayed high. And what happened? About 3 months after they were high, people started buying them again. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. It was
Pretty
just like
short-term memory.
It's like
Yeah.
a temporary bump. So all our prices are high right now. If they stay high like this for 5 years, we'll just be. I don't think we'll be waiting for them to go down. We'll be waiting for the next increase.
While he says he hasn't given his opinion, it's true, but I bet a lot of people have heard opinions.
Sure.
However they fall.
Yeah, perspective.
866-594-4150. Let's go to North Dakota and talk to Derek. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Derek, what can we do for you?
Say, I had some transmission questions. I have a 2009 GMC Sierra four-wheel drive, and it has a 6-speed in it. Sometimes when I'm going to the stop sign, it seems like the converter seems to be struggling to unlock. Sometimes it actually kills at the stop sign. Very intermediate, like it might do it a couple times in one day, and it might not do it for 2 weeks. Another thing is, like if I'm just kind of driving around town and, I'm slow down for a corner, and then you get halfway around the corner and you start getting into the gas just a little bit, instead of the converter unlocking, it seems to lock in hard, and you get kind of a jerk, and then it'll unlock again, and then you continue on. Just, it's kind of strange.
Just my own curiosity, in your '09 Sierra, which motor do you have in that truck?
A 5.3.
All right, and it's a 6-speed automatic.
Yes.
My brain went dead there for a little bit. I didn't realize they put the 6-speed in an '09.
It sounds like
Well,
the torque converter is
not
stuck.
Go ahead. We had two things there at once. Just on reaction to my comment, you were going to say something because I'm curious.
It is a 6-speed. They didn't put them in all of them, but there were some certain ones.
So
But it is.
it does sound like it's sticking. Like you've got a valve in there that either the solenoid's hanging up or a valve and that valve body is hanging up and not allowing it to unlock. So when you're coming to a stop or when you're accelerating around a corner, it's going to be exactly the same thing. If the torque converter does not unlock like it's supposed to, and you accelerate around a corner and it wants to drop down a gear and get out of its own way, it can't. But I mean, it's going to lug a little bit with that torque converter stuck turned on, like leaving a clutch pedal out if you've got a manual transmission. When you come to a stop, it would do the same thing. Using a transmission cleaner in there may help with that, and then flush. It might clean up the valves in the valve body. It may need more diagnosis and repair. It may need a valve body taken apart and cleaned up. It may need a solenoid put in it. But it definitely sounds like you're on the right track, like you've got a valve hanging up in there causing that torque converter to do that. I don't think the torque converter is necessarily the issue unless it's chattering or if it stayed on all the time, something seized up in there. It sounds more like a valve issue. And we've seen that a few times where we've had a valve hanging up and we've flushed them with a cleaner in there and it's fixed the problem. Biggest problem we've seen is usually 09 to 13, right in that area with that transmission.
I did have it flushed, just to see. And there wasn't any shavings or anything. That the shop said it looked real good, and I changed it. I changed oil, just to kind of see what it would do. I did a transmission update,
Sure.
and I replaced the throttle position sensor. It kind of did seem to help a little bit,
Sure.
but it's still just once in a while, it'll kind of hang up. There's a certain valve or something that controls that converter from locking and unlocking. Anything like that?
Yeah, there's a valve in that valve body that does that. And when you flush it, a flush isn't going to do any good on its own. You have to put a cleaner in it, and then you have to drive it under the conditions that will get it to lock up and unlock so that valve moves. Because if you flush the fluid out and that valve never moves, it's never
Sure.
going to clean it. So you need to put the cleaner in first and then drive it and get it to move. But at this point, it sounds like you're going to need to take it into a transmission shop or a shop that does work on transmissions and tell them exactly what it's doing and have them go directly into that valve and make sure it's operating properly. And that would be a good start. And they'll take their recommendation and see what they say, because you probably wouldn't want to flush it again. You're probably going to have similar money into just taking the pan off and working on that valve. And they will be able to give you the best suggestions from what they know.
Derek, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. For those watching at home, Russ is the top vehicle, Shannon the bottom.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. From the Autotempest.com studios, all the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Travis now. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Travis, what can we do for you?
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. Say I had just bought a 2011 Dodge Ram 2500 with a 5.7 Hemi. Great truck so far. A couple things of when I bought it that I knew were wrong with it. It does have the manifold on the passenger side does have some cracked bolts. And then I just got done doing an oil change on it, and looking underneath it, I could see that the transmission cooler lines, a couple of them were starting to seep a little bit, and a little bit of transmission fluid is coming out from the pan, just seeping a little bit. So just wondering which one would be best to tackle first.
We're both about ready to give an opinion here, and I'm curious what Russ's is, but if you've got actual cracked bolts on that exhaust manifold and you're flaring heat, up onto the engine, if it's bad enough, you can start damaging coils and different things in that area. But if those lines are seeping and it looks like they've been that way for a while, they typically don't burst, but they can. I mean, we've seen some of the oil lines on vehicles just, burst suddenly when they've got a seam that's bad, and that's not a good thing going down the road, nor is the transmission line bursting going down the road and dumping all the fluid out. I guess, Russ, I'm guessing you and Matt in the shop and Jake, you guys would look at them and say, you know what? This is going to have to be replaced soon. Can you kind of tell when they're seeping if they're getting a lot worse, or what's the call there?
If they're just a little damp, usually don't worry about them a lot if there's other major items to fix that are safety-wise. But if they're dripping, then we put those down as a let's do now. And then we'd also look at the exhaust and do a case-by-case study. And if we look at the exhaust and it's something super minor and you've got some other things that could kill the car or you, we'll think about addressing those first. But in the case of your exhaust leaking, typically what we find is the longer you wait before you change it, the bigger the chances that the bolts are going to all break off and you're going to have to extract them by welding or drilling, and your expenses are going to get exponentially higher. Well, most of the time we address the exhaust leaks first in that case, unless there's something that's going to damage the engine.
Unless you saw, like I said, a more serious leak. Well,
they're just damp at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, you might just dry them off a little bit and just see, clean them up a little bit, and just see how much they're actually seeping and pay attention. Pay attention to them and look at them.
Sure. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate you being a hoodie.
866-594-4150. Now let's talk to the next Travis. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Travis, what can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. Just going to give you a quick update here. My uncle called in a few weeks ago with a '08 Titan, no start cold. And he and my dad both actually have '08 Titans, and they were both doing the same thing. And we ended up putting a reman ECM in Dad's pickup, and that cured it. It starts all the way down below zero now, and he actually bumped about 3 miles to the gallon, too.
Wow.
After the ECM.
Wow.
So.
Nowadays, that's a big.
I don't know what that was about, but
that's a good deal. 3 miles, you'll pay for that ECM in a hurry at 3 miles per gallon.
Yeah, you bet.
And then what about the
update on that one?
The other one still doesn't start?
The other one still doesn't start when it's cold out. He hasn't got a computer found for his yet or bought for his yet, but I'm pretty confident that'll take care of it.
If it doesn't fix it, call us back and let us know, because that'll help other people, because that would mean it was a 50-50 shot, and then everybody wouldn't go out and just buy a PCM. But if it fixes it on both, then we got a pretty good idea of future things to look at very closely on these trucks.
What, just if you don't mind sharing, what did you end up paying for a reman ECM on a '08 Titan?
Just short of 400 chips.
Okay, and then was that
came from FS1.
Okay, so like a ECM supplier type person that remanufactures them. That company that you got that from actually buys ECMs from auto recyclers on a regular basis, and then they either have the connections or they've developed the technology to flash them and check them. And on some of them, I believe that they know that they don't have to do a lot to them, and they just rebox them. But that's a company that's been buying ECMs from the auto recycling world for quite a while, because they go by FS1. I think that's Flagship 1, I think is what the name of the company is.
Flagship 1, yep.
Yeah.
Weird. I mean, it's weird that somebody came up with that idea or that process, and
there's a couple of them out there, a few of them out there, and they were doing it before the ECM technology started evolving to the point where many of them were, like, as some people would call it, locked down.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing this long before that as a buyer and supplier, because it's a shame on our industry, the auto recycling industry, but it's a fight. Every industry's got their fight. You know, I don't care what industry you're in. They have their fight for whatever it might be for people to know about you. Well, at the end of the day, if you haven't done a good enough job of people knowing about your product, or if your marketing in the industry has been poor, people aren't going to find out. But automotive recyclers, professional ones that have been trying to do things right for a while, they've had these products all along. But the stereotypes have always been junkyard, this kind of stuff. So a lot of folks just never considered that in their decision-making process.
Rename your Gold Star TV LG, because everybody thought
you bring
they were
that example.
junk.
You bring that example up a
Chris,
lot.
Chris told me that, and I went, "What?"
And so that's kind of what these people do, is they find out, you know what, I know people are going on the internet and they're looking for remanufactured ECM, because they go to the dealer and they find out this ECM is going to cost $1,300.
Right.
And they're like, I don't have $1,300. This is an '08 Titan. What do I do? And so they find this other option. Well, this company can do one for $400. That's not so bad. I wonder what they're all about. But they're zoning in just on that ECM purchase, so this company makes themselves an ECM expert. And we've done that in some areas with our company, where we put ourselves out there as a leader in a particular part type just to test it. And one of the things that we've done on our website, just because we figured out, I say we, but our brilliant people in the staff figured out how to make an algorithm and a database to categorize the tires that we take off the cars. And we put the tires as a leader on our website, that people, because it's something people ask about all the time, and they can search up tires by size and everything. And we sell a ton of good quality used tires. But I've got friends of mine in the industry that can't get rid of their tires.
Right.
And they sell them off to tire shops for $15 a piece and let the tire shops sell them. And I keep telling them, you're giving away a lot of opportunity that way to someone else, and that someone else is having that, they're getting the gain out of it, and you're not. And so in this case, we probably sell that ECM to FS1 for $125 or maybe $75. I don't know what it is. I'm just totally guessing. But then they put it through their process. They put their warranties on it, and then they present it, and they become the ECM expert. So there's so much that goes behind the scenes, and that can be about any industry. You can find that out. If you look at the number of people that are on the internet that present themselves as an expert in a product, Russ and I just had one the other day. We were looking up remanufactured engines and trying to help find something for somebody that had a fleet. And he said, hey, I have this supplier I've used before. And he goes, they're a really good rebuilder. And as we looked into it, they don't rebuild a thing. They broker motors from 3 or 4 other companies.
And put a heck of a warranty on it.
And 2 of them happen to be companies that I already deal with. And
but they
didn't have
weren't
the product.
able to get the thought in,
or else they hadn't bought enough ahead of time to stock in a warehouse. Or it's a crazy world if you dig just a couple steps below the surface.
Yeah, you guys have advanced so far. You have cameras now instead of dogs.
There you go, back to the stereotype.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. If you follow us on Facebook and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Kate Larson, who listens to us in Brighton, Michigan. Congratulations from all of us here under the hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute. Universal Technical Institute, the place to go to get trained so you can know exactly what you're doing when you get out in the automotive field, working on cars from gas engines and diesels to electrics, motorcycles, marine mechanics, and everything in between, even certified welding. Universal Technical Institute has a program for you. Check them out at uti.edu.
And looking at some of their TV commercials that I see every once in a while, there may even be scholarship available, it looks like. So you might ask about that. I'm not saying any promises how that all works, but it was mentioned on one of their TV commercials too. So definitely something to look into. Great place.
Let's talk to Tom in Nebraska. Tom, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. I'd like your guys' opinion as to what might have caused an engine failure in a 2015 Silverado 2500 HD with a 6.0 liter V8 gas engine, 3/4 ton. It's my son-in-law's work truck, so it's a daily driver. You know, it hauls loads, pulls trailers. Was bought brand new, had 4 miles on it. It's got 116,000 miles on it now. About a month ago, it developed a knock and began to idle erratically and vibrate, and the check engine light came on, and took it back to the dealership and it began checking out, and a cylinder 1 misfire code had been set on the thing. They first tried putting in plugs and wires. As far as oil changes and everything, that was always done at the dealership where it was bought new, and the intervals were when the onboard system indicated that the oil needed to be changed. But major engine work wound up being needed, including replacing the camshaft, lifters, and push rods. And the question that really hadn't been answered is what might have caused this and what did we do wrong?
That is pretty young in its life for that motor to fail. You know, the 6-liter was more prone to some of those top-end issues than the next generation that they used in there. You know, that engine was still the indirect injected. You know, they had the injectors. Let me just think. I'm back. No, on this. Russ is looking at me, and we're trying to decide if we're shaking heads here or not. On the 6-liter in 2015. That would have been that new generation of 6-liter. I'm just trying to think if that was direct injected like the half-ton 5.3. I don't think it is.
Yeah, the 5.3 was. The 6-liter wasn't until
later than that.
Yeah.
So I guess the point I'm getting at, there was a history there. And what I get a little nervous about, and I'm not just trying to grab the low-hanging fruit from what you said, but what I do get a little bit nervous about, if that truck was used as it was designed, as a work truck in a heavier application, assuming the loads were not overly heavy. I mean, that's a heavy truck, but not as heavy as if it was a Duramax diesel version, or the old ones where they used to put the 8.1 in them and where they really beefed everything up. And it got used in, let's say, a little bit of a dirty atmosphere. Maybe it was a grain atmosphere or a farm atmosphere or a construction atmosphere. And then you use the oil change interval from the algorithms of the dash to change your oil. I don't know that gets you into the heavy service interval that you should consider if that was the use of the truck. Does that make sense for us, what I'm saying?
Definitely does. And the AFM system on those vehicles, occasionally they've had problems, and that's caused some,
when you're talking about active fuel management,
right?
Correct?
And that's caused some catastrophic failures like that, which is when they replace the cam and lifters and push rods and all that stuff. It's not an engine rebuild by any means, but it's a major top-end swap and repair, and it's going to cost you several $1,000s to get that all done. So it hurts. It's not good, and the best thing you can do to prevent that is more frequent oil changes.
By the dash monitor, about how many miles did it let it go, or what period of time?
I've got the information secondhand, so I'm not real sure. I'm guessing it was around 7,000 miles, and I don't know if synthetic oil was put in it
Yeah,
or whether that would have made a difference.
Yeah, if you look at that vehicle service recommendations with that engine, I believe with a heavy service or a heavy use, or what do they call it? An extreme. I mean, what's the term that they use?
Severe use.
Severe use or something like that. That interval is going to start trending back down towards more of the normals that you've been used to in life, 3,500 to 5,000. And so I'd be a little nervous that there wasn't enough oil changes done for the use of the truck. And you could have just had a failure. It does happen, but it's not very often.
The truck wasn't used in dirty conditions. It's in the city doing home repairs in houses.
That's a lot of stop and go.
It wasn't. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, so I mean that's something we
generally when he's on a job, it's several days at a time, so it's not short drives necessarily.
Well, one of the things we talk about often on the show is the importance of a drive cycle on a vehicle and a good warm drive cycle, at a regular basis. And depending on where the climate is, climate makes a big difference too on how much hot and cold, how much moisture is in the air. That all makes a difference for condensation that can build up inside the engine and get moisture inside the engine. But if you don't have the chance to get that vehicle out on a good 15 to half hour run occasionally, so everything can get good and warm and it gets a chance to really heat up inside, lets the EGR system heat up, you just really got to look at the oil change intervals more often than if you are someone that takes a lot of shorter trips around town. There again, I don't want to just grab your low-hanging fruit, but those are the things that can affect it. If you're just going for months on end and your longest run is 15 miles or 10 miles, probably not you're in severe service at that point.
And two things that to kind of make this call feel better is, one, engines can just fail. You can do everything right and engines can fail. And two, you can do everything right to the best of your knowledge and ability, and we find out 7 years later that you needed to do that, this wasn't right. Or, how many things do we know now about certain vehicles, certain engines that you just didn't know? So it doesn't mean that things were done incorrectly. It could just be one of those things.
How much did he end up spending?
Be involved here.
How much did he end up spending?
Good, 6,000.
Yeah.
6K.
And they rebuilt the top end of the engine?
Yeah, I believe so. Could fuel quality be a factor? The quality of the fuel?
Not in the AFM system. Not really. No, it's not to make that big of a difference in there. Now you will get fuel washing. Unburned fuel washes by the rings and gets into the oil. But then again, it's just a matter of when you're doing the maintenance. If you use a poor quality fuel and then you also go very long on your oil changes, there's gonna be some differences.
I mean, he wasn't just buying it from a neighbor who made his own, was he?
No, I'm sure. Although with the recent increases in fuel prices, he was looking for the cheapest fuel around, which may not have been a good idea. But the onboard computer system evidently doesn't take into account the driving type.
It tries. I mean, it uses some algorithms that it's a little bit smart, but it's not a lot smart. It's not measuring the oil. It's not taking any chemical readings of the oil. It's all based on behavior. And so we just see those things typically be longer than they should be, in our opinion, on trucks and things like that. It's just something that we've noticed. I've tried to let my own go, and I get nervous waiting for it to come on.
Right.
For what I think my oil change interval should be. And I've got a 1500 truck with a 6.2 liter in it. And I know that historically on the old 6.2s, there was a lot of cam and lifter and follower issues. So I try to be a little more diligent about that just in case, because I saw the result of that.
Tom, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Bill. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Bill, what can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. Love your show.
Thank you.
Got a weird one for you. I've got a 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland Edition, 30,000 miles on it. And every once in a while, when you open up one of the doors, doesn't matter which one, the back hatch will open up.
That's fun.
And it might not do it. Yeah. It might not do it, 5 or 6 different times. All of a sudden it'll do it. It'll do it when you unlock the vehicle with the fob. It'll do it. And I noticed the other day that the button inside to open the rear hatch does not work. I didn't know. I've called a couple of Chrysler dealerships around the area, and they hadn't heard of it at all. So I thought, well, maybe you guys have heard of it before I take it someplace else to get it looked at. So it's not a big deal, but it's just kind of annoying.
Oh, that seems like a big deal to me. Your vehicles, maybe they're waving at people, just like a hatch
Yeah.
wave. It's a cool
Right.
thing.
Hey.
Yeah, there you go.
That's an
Yeah.
inappropriate thing to have happen if you're parked really close to somebody.
Oh, right.
Wouldn't that be a bummer? I mean, I'm sure that they've got some safety sensors that might stop that, I hope, but ow.
Yeah.
Somebody standing back there, knock them right in the head.
This is the first time we've heard about
Yeah,
this.
Question for you, Russ.
Yeah.
On your scanner, if you get into the secondary system, if you trip the hatch with the button, is there something that would give you an indication if there was a module involved, whether it's getting a signal or not? Or
There is. It would tell us. If the button's pushed, it'll tell us that the button's on or off.
Okay.
So if I was watching that scanner just sitting in there in a seat and you started opening doors and all of a sudden it turns that on, when a door comes open and there's no input to it, I've got a module problem, module failure.
can you freeze frame that data if that
Oh, yeah.
happened? You'd have to be very lucky, though, to have it happen while you're working on it.
Depending on how often it occurs, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's the intermittent.
People, I don't drive it very often, but it seems like when I do, it will usually do it. If I stop 3 different places, whatever, one of those times it will do it. But it's kind of funny that the inside button will not work. So I didn't know if that was tied to it somehow. Why, if that is not working right, if that would cause this to go on or not.
Yeah, definitely. So if you brought it in and we were working on something like that, we would diagnose the obvious failure first and get that fixed.
Okay.
Because if it's a wire, well, we'll get that fixed, and then that's fixed for later. You may still have the other problem occur, but at least your button's working again. But it's very likely that
Sure.
it's going to take a module or something to get that button fixed. And when you do fix that, it's going to repair the whole system. The other thing could be is possibly the switch is broke inside, and it's making a little contact when it vibrates
That's what I was
just
wondering
right.
about.
So you're pushing it, it's doing nothing. But when you open a door up and there's just a tiny little bit of resonance in the
Sure.
vehicle, it's popping the hatch open. That's a possibility
Sure.
too. You could just take the button out, figure out how to get the switch out of there and just unplug it. Leave it unplugged for a few weeks and see if your
if that
problem
ma-
goes away.
yeah.
If it does, it might just be a button.
Question I'm intrigued to ask on that vehicle: if you want to open the rear hatch with the remote control, do you double click or something, or what do you do?
Yeah, you double click. I don't think I've tried that. I
Try
have
that
not
once.
tried that.
Try purposely
Okay.
opening the hatch with the remote control and see what happens. If it was just a single click thing, then same situation. I'd wonder if maybe he has a short in his remote that's when you push the button to do something else, it's across that plate pressing down and acting like you're pushing the other button. You know how that happens with the switch sometimes? But I think Russ's analysis there of going where that other problem is.
Bill, do you have control over all the fobs? It's not one of your neighbors trying to drive you crazy, is it?
I hope not.
Okay.
He lost a fob, and
Yeah,
so
you
he's
just-
following him around and just watch this.
My son did that once to my wife. He just kept popping the trunk on her when she was in the driveway.
That's not nice.
And it was one of the more hilarious things. So hopefully, Bill, that's not it. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to Colorado and talk to Ed. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Ed, what can we do for you?
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I got a 2000 Jeep Grand Cherokee, a 4-liter inline six, and I changed the injectors, and then after I did that, it started fine, then I drove it, and I let it set the next day or a couple hours, and then I'd have to floor it to get it started. It wouldn't just start right up like it usually did before the injector change. So then I pulled the rail again and put some airline pressure to the, I thought would have had a little gas coming out of a couple injectors, so I replaced them, put it all back together, and the first day it started right up, and then let it sit and it started right up. Then the next day, went out, started, and I had to floor it again. And then I've been experimenting different ways. I pumped to the gas a few times and it started. Majority of the time I got to floor it, so I didn't know if I don't have enough fuel pressure now maybe to open the newer injectors, or if I still got bad injectors leaking by.
Before you get too deep into this, I want to ask a question. What was the original thing you started trying to fix that you went in and put injectors in there? What was your goal when you started?
I had a bad injector. I got it pretty much to clear up with just putting injector cleaner in, but then I'd still, every once in a while, I'd kick out. I had a code for the check engine on it. And so I just replaced them all when I took it apart, and then I put new coil packs and spark plugs also. Same time, pretty much.
Did you put a fuel
Well,
filter
actually,
on
I
it?
did that before. No, I did not put a fuel filter. I thought that was all in the fuel tank, isn't it?
And not, you're right at the edge of splitting between no fuel filter and fuel filter. So I would want to find that out for sure. But I'm wondering if you don't have something in the fuel in the tank that's contaminating the system, like possibly rust. And it's 23 years old almost, so it's if you got a little bit of fine rust or something in the tank and it's getting past that filter, rust will go right by it, get all the way to the injectors. The injectors will start to hang open and they'll fail. So that could have killed your original injector, and now you replaced them, and it's happening again. It's just you're getting some trash in them. You take them out, put some air to them. You may clean the pintle out enough where they work for a little bit, and then start doing it. If you pull the injectors out and they're wet, they're failed. They're leaking. So something's getting in there, and then I would be digging deeper into that tank in the system.
That would be a plastic tank in that truck, and they also had issues if the fuel pump ever fails, they would lose material inside of the tank. Really fine.
Yeah.
You're thinking of the earlier generation with the metal, but the plastic tanks on those would get the material from the pump when it would start to fail, or when the pump failed, and that material was so fine, it was like a microscopic plastic resin that would get into the system. And there was I'm pretty sure that's the generation that they had a service Bolton that if you lose a pump, you put a tank in, and flush the system. Now, we don't want you to just go start buying parts. These are things you need to check on, right, and find out.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering why, it was, if I did just fine with the old injectors, start right up, and then it did it after I had the injectors, it'd start right up, but then all of a sudden now I'm having to floor it again.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want Russ to walk us through that. Is that vehicle of an age, I think most of them were, that if you put it all the way to the floor with a fuel injection, you're cutting the injectors off.
Yes.
And that typically is what you used to do in an old carburetor car when it was flooded, to be able to give it a whole bunch more air, and at that point you were choking the fuel also. So if with that fuel injected vehicle, when you put that all the way to the floor, you're stopping the fuel flow. If it starts then, that's just another indication that it's overfueling, most likely, whether it's a pressure regulator or the injectors themselves that are damaged again and allowing too much fuel to get into those cylinders, and you got to do that to clear it out. If you start feathering the throttle during startup on that age of vehicle, Russ, what's that going to be doing to it?
Giving it more gas.
Yeah. And you typically don't want to do that on these newer vehicles at all.
No, that would tell
it's
you.
It's either no throttle or full throttle is
Right.
is what you're going to be doing on a fuel-injected vehicle, and you shouldn't ever really have to do the full throttle unless something's broken.
Like a leaky injector.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's why I thought a couple of them I replaced. It looked like they were, when I put about 30 pounds of air on that rail, I could see a little bit of a drip, accumulate in the cup there.
Well, you're going to want to do a fuel pressure rail test on it. I mean, as far as with a fuel pressure gauge to see what kind of flow and pressure you're getting up to that rail. Maybe there's something wrong where it's way over pressure in the injectors too, with a pressure regulator bad or maybe something in the pump. Those are all things you would check before I start buying more parts, for sure. And do not, for a second, think you shouldn't check the health of each cylinder of that engine if you haven't done that already, because they'll do funny things when they're mechanically not working right. So a leak down test in each cylinder, and in that vehicle, it's a little simpler. You can just take each cylinder to top dead center, take the spark plug out, use a compression tester to inject shop air into it, and just pressurize it and just see what that cylinder does. And if you don't have what seems like leakage into the crankcase or leakage into the intake, you got a tight cylinder in each one, that's a good thing to check, just to make sure you don't have some underlying issues with the cam and lifters and those, because that was right in an era where the oils were changing, and if a person's not getting the right amount of zinc and different properties, the ZDDP type stuff, you could pretty easily start having cam problems with those.
And with the tank, is there anything that he should be doing, checking?
If you find out you've got an injector that's failed because of some garbage in there, you're going to need to replace pretty much all of it, just like we do with the diesels on the Chevy trucks when they start getting contamination in them. You've got to replace it, because if you've had repeat injector failures because of trash getting in the system, that means at the minimum a pump and the injectors to replace that. But then what's in the tank, because it's going to return everything back to the tank that's getting up to the injector. So there's something.
It would be unusual to have that many if they're brand new injectors fail.
Right.
Even of a lower quality, if you bought the lower price point instead of the highest price point, that would be unusual. I would probably be asking the parts store, have you had a failure rate on these? Because, okay, there could be a bad batch, but that's unlikely. That doesn't happen a lot.
I've seen people go to the Hobby Lobby and buy those cheap hobby microscopes that are still pretty powerful, and they've used them in shops for checking things like fuel and oil just to see what's in there. Because if you put a little bit of fuel on a slide under it, you'll see trash in there if there's trash compared to a clean sample.
That really makes me want to say the word beaker.
Ed, thanks very much for the call. That'll do it for Hour 1. Hour 2 is coming up. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show, brought to you by Sturdivant's.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. And let's get right to that and talk to Steve here on the Under the Hood Show. Steve, what can we do for you?
Morning. My son has a '07 GMC 1500 with the 5.3 in it, and we're fighting a battery drain down issue when it sits for any length of time. The battery's been tested a couple times and it checks out okay. It failed here just the other day, and he got it into one of the parts houses and they tested the system, and the alternator is bad, or they say the regulator and the alternator is bad, so we're going to replace that. But, well, and he was looking for the information to determine how big the alternator was. He found on the sheet that the pickup has a battery rundown protection system in it. What does that entail, and where would it be in the pickup? And if it is failing, is that part or all of his problem, do you think?
Let me take a shot at this, Russ. Let's see how I do. The battery rundown protection system that I believe that they list in the options they brag about in a section of the truck is more designed if you have an accessory that's left on, interior lighting that is left on, just trying to think of anything that would be switched that you could still leave on with the key out in the vehicle or out of the vehicle for that matter. Cigarette lighter things like that. After a certain period of time with those things on and the rest of the system shut down, there's a shutdown relay that comes into play that kills the power and puts everything to sleep. That system can't shut down a voltage regulator that stays engaged in the alternator. If the alternator is staying turned on and that regulator is staying energized, it's going to continue to put a drain on that battery regardless of what that system is doing because it's direct to the battery. So what you got to do, I know Russ has had this before where they've had cars where they're having a drain down. They'll lift the hood on a cool day and they'll go out in the morning and touch the alternator, and the alternator is physically warm because it was still doing stuff overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And so based on what you're telling us, I think you're heading the right direction.
Exactly. Battery rundown protection is only for the accessory devices, headlights, things like that you're going to leave on. Some of them don't even protect the headlights. They just do all the interior stuff. But typically they'll work on the headlights as well and shut them down after a certain number of minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, something like that, so the battery doesn't die or until a voltage reaches a certain point. You are going to have to test one system at a time. A voltage regulator and an alternator that's failed, that'll definitely run the battery dead quickly, because it can pull a lot of amps. You can get 10 amps or more being pulled from an alternator that's stuck on like that. So if they make that repair and it doesn't do any good, you're going to have to go to one system at a time. Put an amp meter in line with one of the battery cables. Look at your amps. If it says 2 amps on there, you have to go to one circuit at a time, pulling fuses until you find it and kill it, and then you have to find out what's wrong in the system. Let's say we pull out the fuse for the radio, and it quits, and it goes down to 100 milliamps. You go, well, now it's not going to go dead. It'll sit there a month and it's not going to go dead. Well, plug it back in, it goes back up. Which component is bad? Is it the amplifier for the radio? Is it the radio itself? Is it the dash module? But there's certain things that will be on that circuit. You have to look at the diagram for it and see how many components are in that fuse circuit.
And don't be tricked, because once the same reason that system shuts things down, that system also gets energized. So I know Russ has talked on the show before that sometimes you're better off having a window down that you can reach in and turn things on and off without having to open the door, because when you open the door, you energize a lot of systems.
We open the doors and then we close the latches on them so we can work on the car with the latches closed like we're not in the car.
I'd rather have you do it like it's a race car and see you guys crawling inside. That's what I imagined. Jake with his feet sticking out.
Like the Duke boys.
Hardest part is trying to get to a fuse box that's on the end
side
of
the
dash. Yeah, can't do that.
Now, for just people listening, the other hoodies are out there like, okay, if you've ever sat in the car while your wife runs into a store, you ever done that, Chris?
Sure.
My wife's never run into a store. She's a pretty good driver.
That was a dad joke I would typically make.
Have you had anybody run into a store?
Yeah, I actually have.
Not your wife, though.
No, it was my daughter. She ran into the Stop and Shop up in Garrettson. She ran right into it.
I really needed some gum. I didn't want to get out. It was cold, Dad.
It was her first experience with a slippery parking lot and a Prius. Just after we fixed it, we were driving it to test drive it, and she tapped the brakes, and a little bit of snow built up by the tires, and she slid right into the brick wall in the front of Stop and Shop.
See?
Yeah. So, yeah, she has run into a store. But if you've ever been in the vehicle while your significant other walks into the store to shop, and you've been sitting there listening to the radio in a car, and then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, everything shuts down, that's the shutdown relay taking over. And you got to start things back up again.
Module.
That also, on these, I say newer cars, it is incredible how fast you can run a battery dead, and that's why they put that system in.
Right.
You could take your 1975 Caprice from high school or whatever it might happen to be.
Monte Carlo.
We had
speakers out on the roof.
Yeah, and you could seem like run that forever with the radio on. And then all of a sudden it'd be, an hour later it's dead. But you do that to an 07 Tahoe, you're dead in 15, 20 minutes. There's so much draw on that system. Does that help you? I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff there, but does that help you?
Can I add one more thing to just one more question?
Oh,
about
sure.
it? He's got a add-on start system on it, and it has never worked for whatever reason. Could that have any play on what's going on there?
It sure
remote
could.
Start system.
Especially if it's not working, something could be wrong. That's easy to find out. Just unplug it. There's a big connector going into it with all the power wires. Just unplug it and see what happens. Put a piece of tape over the end of it when you unplug it, because there's where the connectors are. Sometimes it can wiggle around under there, and where the screw points stick out under the dash, one can stick in there. I've had that short, so we just put a little piece of duct tape over it.
Didn't producer Doug have one where the remote start was draining his battery?
Yeah, the Prius.
Yeah.
It did.
And producer Doug's back today. He was out with a little medical issue, and we're glad to have him back. So welcome back. Now we get to talk about your broken car.
Well, and I had one that was causing problems because I had a remote start in it that I didn't know about. I bought it used, and it had a remote start that wasn't working but was shorting out the system years later, unbeknownst to us.
And let's not get wrong here. A professionally installed remote start system is typically zero issue. Our friends at Audio Playground and others install a bunch of them. We've got them on our vehicles. But there are ones that we've seen installed not so well, and then over time, it starts causing headaches. So do not rule that out as a possibility for your failure. And hopefully you haven't had too many failures on that battery where you've taken too much life off of it. You can get away with a little bit, but if it goes dead too many times, you're starting to take life off that battery every time.
Well, and that too many times isn't many times.
No, but they'll know. If they're testing, if they got the right tester, they'll be able to tell them.
Steve, thanks very much for the call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150.
car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. From the Autotempest.com studios, all the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Now let's talk to Mike. Mike, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yes, I have a Sun Tach that I'd like to use, but I'm not sure if it requires a sending unit or not to go with it. I haven't been able to find any information on it. It has two insulated terminals on back. One says ground and the other says alternator phase. Back probably in 1971, FT640 it looks like model. But wonder if you'd have any insight there as to how to go with that.
How many wires does it have on it?
Just the two terminals on back coming out. Then there's one for the light in back.
You've only got two terminals, period, on it?
Yes.
Usually you
One
have
says
power.
ground, and the other says alternator phase.
That's picking up an RPM signal from the alternator. You could use it on a diesel or a gas. Typically, you'll have three wires coming out. You have a power, ground, and then a white wire usually, which is your tach signal in order to get your tach, and then you'll have a switch on it, 4, 6, 8 for RPM on the back of the tach. Yeah, that's an old tach that's using the alternator for the reading, like a diesel tach.
Okay, so you're thinking that I do not, it would just maybe do what, the rotor cap or something on the back of the alternator?
Yeah, it's using the alternator to get you your RPM. You'd want to use a different tach, one that'll hook up to your coil that you can set the number of cylinders on.
It's kind of a nostalgic tach, and I kind of wanted to go with it. But,
I don't even know if it'll work with I think that style will only work with the old alternator that has an external regulator. I haven't seen one of those hooked up in, I bet it's been 30 years since I messed with one of those, so I don't even remember on those.
It's going on a 70 Ford truck.
Well, then does it still have the external regulated alternator on it, or does it, a generator, or does it have a...
Yes, it does have a external regulator.
You might be able to hook that up then. You're just going to have to find somebody that'll show you how to wire it on the internet. That could be tricky because you're getting back there. I mean, even that age, most people are still using like the 3-wire Sun Tach.
Maybe our friends at Dakota Digital have some sort of an adapter. Probably not, because they're trying to go the other way. They're trying to get you to a modern gauge.
Right.
Yeah. For an old vehicle. They're not going backwards, but that's just a thought I had as I was listening to this.
They have one to get you from that style to the new one that has the pulse coming out where you set the cylinder numbers. But this is already kind of built into it.
Mike, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Let us know how that goes. Would someone like Dakota Digital be able to... Would they know somebody in their neighborhood who does it? Maybe? No.
I don't think so. That's especially now. Things have changed so much. There was a time, even 4 or 5 years ago, it was rare then, but occasionally you'd find somebody that said, oh, yeah, we used to do those. We can help you out at our shop or something like that. But now, with a limited number of personnel that are at shops all across the country, their concern is if you're calling them, it better be because you want a car fixed, and they're going to tell you when they can get it in, hopefully when they can get it out, and repairs to be made.
Yeah, your best bet is if you can find that person after hours where they're a friend of a friend and you can chat for a little bit.
At a car show this summer.
Car show this summer.
Yeah.
It just
exactly.
It wouldn't be against the norm for Dakota Digital to have that knowledge because they do have to learn the old technologies in order to adapt to the new technologies. But it's not like they're a tech line for the old stuff. Their job is to make their modern stuff that shows up in all these fancy vehicles you see running across the stage at the big shows. It's always Dakota Digital gauges for the most part.
The tech line will be for their products that they currently sell.
You could make a call and just see what happens. If they can't do it, they'll tell you pretty quick. I'm sure that this isn't our area. But.
No hurt in trying.
Yep.
Mike, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Colorado and talk to Jim. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Jim, what can we do for you?
Hey, good morning. And first, I'd like to say you guys always amaze me at the depth and breadth of knowledge about all things automotive. Totally amazing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I've worked hard to gain this knowledge over the years.
I think he was talking. I think he was talking to Russ.
Oh, he was talking, not me. Okay, I understand.
But he's got. I see up on the board here. He's going to ask about a Mini Cooper, so he could quickly prove us to not know the depth and breadth.
Chris
Might
is our
just be a
best
test.
student.
Yeah,
Chris is a good student.
Well, I've got a 07 Mini Cooper S with the R56 turbo. We've got 93,000. And about 12,000 miles ago, I had the Walnut treatment done on it. And it's running great now, but I want to keep it running good. And I know in the past you've recommended a product for cleaning the valves. Can you do you recall which product that is that you recommend?
Yes, we were talking about doing the professional fuel system service using a product that our partner Justice Brothers carries, which is TerraClean. It's a system called TerraClean, and it's available at some other. We get our product through that distributor, through Justice Brothers, but the machine, a lot of shops own and have, and then they purchase their product for the TerraClean system through Justice Brothers. That system is the professional way to keep it clean once you've had to do walnut blasting to get it clean.
Explain that to people. Where did you find someone to do walnut blasting? I mean, that's not.
They still do it. A lot of shops still
I know,
do it.
but where did you find somebody to do that?
Well, when I lived in Colorado Springs, I live in Denver area now, but there is a car repair shop that specializes in BMWs and Minis and things like that, and they were able to do the blasting there.
And just for people listening, they don't just sit there with an air gun and shoot walnuts at your vehicle. They're using the they're using the particles to basically sandblast or to try to clean out the carbon that's built up and things like that.
And the shells are softer than.
Yeah, so they will run through the engine when you start it up instead of causing an issue where you would with you can't put beads or anything in that.
Who thought of that the first time?
No kidding.
They had to. I'm sure Ford was doing it.
World War
BMW was
II.
doing it.
I'm sure it was a war.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But they were trying to find ways to remove that stuff that wouldn't damage the engine, and they have to destroy the carbon enough where the carbon doesn't damage the engine either, because that can be harder than the walnut shells. But yeah, you want to keep that thing clean. It's very likely you're going to have to blast this thing again at some point, because those cars have a huge, huge issue with this. I mean, we've got one customer 3 times he had an issue with this. Like 30,000 miles did it, 30,000 miles did it, and it needed it again.
Well, maybe just running at 100 miles an hour once a week.
Not going to help.
Not going to help. Okay.
Nope. It's the fuel quality makes a big difference in it. Here, this guy here that we have in our shop runs the E30 in his ethanol blend, and he swears it's keeping it cleaner. Top tier fuels right now, if you've listened to us in the past and we said buy top tier fuel, make sure you're actually getting it. Ask the station you're purchasing it from, do you have top tier fuel now? And if they can't tell you, find another station, because right on the gas pump it'll say top tier, but on the note on their front door, a lot of them say we're unable to get top tier fuel due to shortages and things right now with the chemical package. So the fuel, you're paying full price for it, but you're not getting what you were getting. You're getting whatever they can get and put in their pump. So
I defy you to walk into any gas station and get any answer from anyone working
That's
there.
what I'm saying. You need to go to a different place, because it's going to say it on the door. And from the stations, I've seen 3 so far that had it on the door, which means somebody smart enough there put it on the door. And if they're saying it, my thought is probably none of them have it. If that one doesn't have it, and we've got a couple fuel carriers that listen to this show regularly, and then they email us now and then when we have a question. So one of you two guys that are doing that, you want to email me and let me know because you're picking up this fuel and delivering it. They know what's going on.
Yeah, because I mean, the person behind the counter is going to know what the 3-for-1 special is on the Lay's chips. But
Maybe.
Exactly.
But they're not going to know about the fuel most
Right.
likely.
That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, and also I haven't gone into a gas station to to pay for gas in
But Russ makes a
15
point that is extremely good, is that if I'm Mr. Fuel Station, Mrs. Fuel Station, and my pump is labeled this, and that's not what's going into the vehicles, they need a disclaimer of some sort.
On every pump, not just on the front door.
It's kind of interesting because if you're using a credit card, you'd never see it.
Right.
I had to run in for a moon pie and notice the door said.
When's the last time I had a moon pie?
Does that help you out at all, Jim?
The TerraClean system, is that only professional
Yes.
shops? Or
Yes, it
that
is.
A home?
No, definitely not a home thing. You need to hook it up to the fuel rail in the
You
car.
could buy one
and run.
if you
You could
wanted
buy
to.
them at about $2,500.
And to be clear, you're talking about TerraClean, but any professional shop, they might not have TerraClean, but they'll have some system that does this.
Most
right? I mean,
most shops have something. There's Snap-on makes one. There's
Doesn't BG make one?
BG makes one.
and they would tell. I mean, if
Wins
they
makes
couldn't
one.
do it, they would say, "Oh, we don't have that machine."
Just
Head
make
over
sure
to-
they're not pouring something into the
But
gas
the,
tank.
we've,
and
the
calling
one
it
we've had
good.
good experience, and that's what we've said this.
Mhm.
If you're going to have a fuel injection cleaning done, just have them explain the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it should involve a machine hooked to the rail,
Right.
Pressurized system. It's not there's a process to it.
You don't need to know what they're saying. You just need to make sure they say a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show. If you follow us, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and join the Hoodie Fan Club at UnderTheHoodShow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Robert Rawlings, who listens to us in Palm Springs, California. Congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu. Your one-stop source for getting trained on everything automotive you can imagine. From NASCAR Technical Institute down to welding up on cars, body shop collision repair, automotive, marine mechanics, jet skis, outboard motors, inboard motors, all of that. They've got technicians there, technician trainers. The manufacturers help them out and teach their trainers what they need to know to get your car fixed. So, I mean, there's nothing like it. Check them out, uti.edu.
Let's go to Mississippi and talk to Rex. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Rex, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I've got a 2004 GMC Sierra, 1500, 9.3. Got a couple 100,000 miles on it. Cruise control quit working on it here a few weeks ago, and changed the bulb, the brake light bulb out in the cab brake light, which I felt sure would be what it was. Went on and replaced both of those, actually, and that didn't fix it. So I put a brake light switch in it. I didn't really think that's what was wrong with it, but I went on and put one in. They were only around $20, but still got no cruise. Just kind of wondering if it could, I guess it could be in the stem or either, I don't know about the throttle control or control module, whatever that is, on the left side of our wall up there.
Well, Rex, we appreciate you listening to the show, and for other listeners out there, that he hit on some things that are pretty common sometimes with a cruise control system. A high brake light bulb being burned out. Don't think about it all the time. If that bulb is burned out, cross filament, something inside of there, that can stop the system to work. It gives it a false signal on that type of a system. You have the taillight bulbs, brake light bulbs can do the same thing. Another place that you might check if it's got a aftermarket wiring harness wired up underneath for the trailer, check on that. Make sure that there's not some corrosion or wires that are messed up back up under behind the bumper that are crossing things. That's a place to look also. You've hit on all the high points. The brake light switch on the brake pedal is something that often can cause that system not to work or put it into a, hey, I think I'm getting a brake signal, so I'm not working. But after that, then you got to start hooking onto it to see, okay, are the switches giving the signal? What else is there, Russ? You get into does the TAC module come into play at all or not? Or
if it's had one of those LED strips put above the bumper with the lights in it, and they're plugged in, they can cause some issues with those too. A few of them had some failures, so unplug it if you can. But the best way to do it is to get yourself a scanner that can read body data. You plug that thing in. Even a lot of the ones that'll read just engine data, some of the base ones, the Bluetooth ones, won't read cruise control, the TAC module data, just other engine data. But if you get one that does read that, and they're not like super expensive ones, just medium ones out of the box there, read and see what your what the cruise inputs are, because it'll tell you cruise set switch, resume switch, on off, brake switch. All those things will be right in there, and you can tell if you push the button on the stock and nothing changes, or if the resume button works but the set and the on off doesn't work. You know you've got a problem in that switch. But in the 04, where that stock plugs in, they've had some issues with wiring in there too. So you know, that's a possibility too. A lot of those are on the steering wheel, depending on which model you get. You know, stock steering wheel. If it's a stock one, the wire is going down through problems. All the steering wheel ones, clock springs can fail, and that's where you're going to need to get in again with your with a scanner and read. If you see there's nothing making a connection when you're pushing those buttons, then it's probably like a clock spring failure.
We sold a few hundred of the old style cruise control modules from the earlier generation before they went to the electronic throttle, the big brick that GM had, and we sold a bunch of them. But in the course of selling all those out, we probably had 10 times where a customer thought the brand new unit we were selling was bad, and after pressing them a little bit and sending another unit, on about every occasion they had put aftermarket bulbs in their taillights that were LEDs, that we're not creating enough resistance to normalize the circuit from what resistances were expected
Right.
when they engineered the system. So I would challenge them to put the regular bulbs back in, and not only did my cruise control module start working, so did their old one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And so
No LED.
yeah, just consider make sure the LEDs are set up. The quality ones take the resistance into account.
He says no LEDs in
Yeah,
his,
I know,
but
but
for other ones, definitely.
Right. Does that give you some more places to kind of step to, Rex?
Need the scanner.
It does. I will. My son-in-law has a little better scanner than mine. I've got a little Walmart scanner, and I don't think it does any of that. But I will get with him and see if we can figure that out. I thank you guys a lot.
Thanks very much for the call. And the scanners, it's crazy how the prices just, while I've been doing this show, which is a long time, but they are getting better and better and cheaper and cheaper.
They are. Even though prices are going up, that ability to make them is getting cheaper and more people want them. So supply and demand, more people are buying them. There's some things where if more people buy them, the supply and demand, it's cheaper. But in other cases, it's more expensive.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Florida and talk to Mercury. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Mercury, what can we do for you?
Hey, fellas, how's it going? It's I found out about your show from my friend Butch. He is a big fan. He told me you guys are great dudes. I got to tell you, I'm genuinely floored by your scope of knowledge.
Thank you.
It's pretty impressive. I'm a cold open guy for the Not Even a Show. It's where Butch works, and
Sure.
we're working on the cold open for the season finale right now. And
Tell you what, for the season finale, we want to do something really special.
so what I was hoping to do was you guys could make some car noises, like some engine noises. I'll sing a rendition of Let's Start the Show, and then I'll say hit it, and you guys just say Let's Start the Show, and then we can kick this show off with a
I've
bang.
never been put in this position before. It
Let's
scares
do
me
it.
what's going to
Let's
happen.
do it.
What are we yelling?
Okay, start making some car noises. As soon as I say hit it, then you guys all say Let's Start the Show. But you guys just for now make car noises while I sing.
All right. Let's do this. Vroom, 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 vroom.
Oh, my goodness. Crash. Don't hit that. Is that a car noise?
Wow.
Okay, guys, hit it.
Let's start the show. Thanks very much for the call, guys. If you haven't seen that show, we went and checked out some episodes. It's a fun show.
It is.
It's not for everyone. Just a little word of warning there. Thanks very much for the call, though. We got to get to Idaho now and talk to Stuart. Stuart, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hi, I've got a 1995 Mercury Grand Marquis, standard 4.6, about 123,000 miles on it, good shape, running good. Just a week or two ago, the headlights will shut off when you're driving. Now, they do start up again, but they'll shut off for a few seconds or a minute, then start up again. The turn indicators work fine. They've never stopped. Hazard lights are fine. Brake lights are fine. They've never shut off. The headlights will come back on. Would this be unfortunately, probably an electrical? It's probably behind the dashboard, obviously. I don't think it's the steering column. It's not pinching any wires, anything. And the switch itself on the left side of the dashboard, even the automatic, it will turn on the lights. I used to switch it occasionally on it. It would turn on the headlights. But now that's no longer happening. And I've messed, obviously, with the switch. It doesn't, on the dashboard, back and forth gently, back and forth. It doesn't seem to have any effect. Now, the brights do come on, but I have to hold the switch on, which I don't like doing that to oncoming drivers. That's illegal and not safe or smart. And luckily, I live very near where I work, and the headlights will come. It doesn't matter whether it's cold weather or even now when it's warming up. Would that be the wiring harness behind it? I'm going to presume. What do you think?
Well, you've got that automatic switch on there, and there's a lighting module on that vehicle. We've seen failures in that module, and if I remember right, that module is behind the bumper that runs this thing. with the automatic.
Front bumper or rear bumper?
The front bumper on the driver's side. I'm just trying to remember. We've only worked on a couple of these where we had to fix it, and we ended up eliminating that module because we just couldn't get one new or used or anything available for it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I started out by pulling the dash switch out and checking it, and found out there were no burnt terminals or contacts or anything there. And then I noticed, okay, we've got this automatic system in here. What's going on? I pulled the diagram and watched it, and I saw it went through a relay, and the relay inside that you were hearing clicking was being controlled by this part up under the front. So I said, okay, what's going on here? So I went all the way up to the front, unplugged the wiring from this thing, and jumpered across the in and out terminals on it, and the lights started working again. And I was able to use the dimmer switch and the standard headlights, but I lost that Twilight Centennial and the timer thing on that. That was all gone, but turned out to be a module failure in that. But, you would think it'd be something under the dash, like a relay that was causing the failure, which it could, but the module up under the front was causing that not to come on.
And some vehicles, some of the GMs that had a similar system in that era, they were all switching between, we want this option, we don't have our wiring harnesses engineered to be able to include it into another module, so they would start slapping on separate pieces. And so some of the GM stuff had a separate lighting module under the dash. We've talked about that on LeSabres and Park Avenues that would fail. And if you can get the wiring diagram for your exact car, you can see where that stuff goes.
And you can. But I'd tell you, beware. I know you're thinking, well, maybe I might have to go to a shop and check it out. I would make the call, tell them, I've got this car, I'm losing head. You just keep it as short as you can. I got this car, the headlights fail very quickly after I turn them on, or sometimes they don't come on. Do you have people there that are familiar with this 05 Mercury and have worked on it? Because I could tell you, you know what? I've had that happen before, and I've bypassed this. But if they can't tell you, they got to start at the beginning, and they're starting the beginning. I mean, it took me about 4 hours the first time to figure this out. And if you're at a shop charging $175 to $180 bucks an hour, that's going to get taxing. So if they say, "Oh yeah, we've done this before, we can get you fixed up, Stuart," that would be the way to go.
Yeah, I've got a good place. They're pretty reliable. They're knowledgeable, and they've got really good experience. Do you think actually they could remove the module and just cross-wire it?
We removed the module in the two we worked on, so it is possible, and they may suggest that. So if they suggest it, it's so you just have standard lights on, off, that is a possibility too. But they need to look at that and see which system your car is equipped with to make sure they're not going from a low voltage or a low amperage headlight switch and tying it into a high voltage. Because one of the cars we did had that, and we had to use relays. So the relays turned on the lights, and they were fused, but the headlight switch was a low amperage, so they had small, thin wires controlling the bigger amperage relays.
I heard one thing, and I read another. What year is this car for sure?
2005.
Okay, all right. Because I had written down 1995 when I wrote my note here, and that's what I had in my head as Russ was talking.
They've got that old system, too, even older.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Even
that's
different.
Interesting.
Stuart, stay where you are. I'm going to put you on hold, and I'm going to go right to Steve. Steve says he might have an answer for Stuart. Steve?
Yeah, this is Steve from Baltic. I'm the guy who had all the Crown Vics way back when. Okay, and I've talked to Shannon actually at one of the wheelbarrow things about this exact problem. The main problem is they had the ground connected to the back of the engine, and that eventually corrodes, and it does cause all of the problems, and it does eventually ruin the light switches. What I did to correct the problem, because you can't get to that ground wire there, which corrodes, you just splice a wire into your ground wire and hook it to the front of the engine, and that completely clears up the problem. But sometimes people let that go so far, and the light switches, you have to replace them too. But the original cause of the problem was that ground wire in the back that eventually corrodes.
Steve, thanks very much for
thanks
the call.
for the call. I remember talking to you at the thing, and I kind of forgot that conversation. It may not be exactly parallel to what he's having for a problem, but anytime you're working with a circuit like this, and you don't have a good ground in the system, or you've got a bad ground anywhere in the system, you can start chasing power around. And
First thing to check when you're working on a module, power and ground.
Yep.
But
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show. What has caught your attention in the automotive world?
Well, two things. We had mentioned before, and I wanted to kind of put a cap on the story about Pat that had the Mustang GT. You know, Pat was this wonderful elderly lady, and she was full of energy, and she had this Mustang GT. And then Gene from Austin had sent us a note to
Minnesota.
let us know, Austin, Minnesota, sent us a note to let us know that Pat had passed. I did get a hold of Jean on the phone yesterday, and we talked for quite a while.
Yeah,
and super nice lady, the maven of Main Street in Austin, Minnesota. And she said she had people come up to her because a lot of people in the town, she said, listen to the show and had heard us talking about Pat's passing. But she seems like between her and her daughter working at that store, they do so many amazing things that are almost like old school leatherworks and dyeing satin shoes, making baptism dresses for kids out of things that came from an heirloom of the family, and just a lot of really neat stuff. It was a great conversation. I just want to thank those great people that listen out there in Austin, Minnesota. And we did send a little care package over to Jean that's in the mail on her way to her, so she should appreciate that. She can decide to share if she wants. That's her choice. It's being sent addressed to Jean in Austin. So thank you very much. The story I ran across, though, that is something that Russ and I have joked about. Maybe Chris has joked about it more than me. But I usually look for the low-hanging fruit when it comes to jokes. I'm a pretty dad joke, low-hanging fruit guy. But over the years, how many people have called up to us and had their radio broken, and they can't tune their radio.
A lot.
And what have we usually said as a joke?
Oh, well, does it work on this channel? If you can get us, you're good. Don't mess with it.
Exactly. Don't worry about changing it.
Right.
What if that was a potential liability problem or a lawsuit problem? This happened.
Explain.
Yeah,
Because I'm very curious now.
This is from Automotive News, their final assembly page, which is a great place to get some quick information. And I love Automotive News. I wish I could take time to read the entire magazine, but I usually end up just in final assembly. But there was a radio station in an area of the country. I don't know if I should get that specific because it could add to the problem. But Mazda owners started coming into their local dealership, and they're having problems with their radios. And all their radios, they realized, were stuck on the same channel. And they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't get parts to fix a lot of them. There was a module that was jammed up in the car. Come to find out that a station in the area on HD radio had sent out a virus across their airwaves.
On purpose?
No, by accident. And the virus somehow or another got into the signal, and it jammed up the car's electronic radio on the high definition radio. How in the heck would that happen?
Well, because there's a lot of over-the-air programming and things that these can be done on these radios. So, yes, we're having to worry about viruses not only on our computers, but our smart devices, our phones, our TVs at home.
So they found out that everybody had tuned to the same channel. It happened to be an NPR channel. And here we go. I'll just read the last couple paragraphs of this. Mazda North America operations told the owner, I'm not giving the name here, has diagnosed the issue and told dealers how to fix it. Dealers have been instructed to submit goodwill requests to Mazda's warranty department and schedule consumers for free repairs when the parts arrive. Between 1/24 and 1/31 date, a radio station in the Seattle area sent image files with no extensions, which caused an issue on some 2014 to 17 Mazda vehicles with older software, Mazda said in a statement. The radio station, for its part, said it's working with the company behind HD radio technology to investigate the issue and sheepishly thanked those affected for becoming involuntarily loyal listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not a virus. That's just an image file with no extensions.
Yeah,
so they're
I
probably sending
said
their
that
call
wrong.
letters and yeah. So they were sending call letters and
a corrupt file,
album art and stuff like
it's
that.
kind of a virus if it's a corrupt file.
No, it's a different. It's not an executable. It's
right. That's the good point. Good point. You make a exactly
But it was
point.
causing it to go. Oh, we got too much stuff here. We're just locked up. We don't know what to do. But that's a great thought.
And I do know.
Evil Russ is coming out.
Well, and it comes up. I do know of that not the exact problem, but it coming up with RDS and people that listen to albums and podcasts. Same thing. The podcast that they were listening to sent out a file, and it was actually named after a day of the week. Totally legit. But it just happened that was the same extension of that day that the digital radio was using. So they sent out this picture attached to this specific song, and it took over that entire section of this person's radio. So anytime they would go to it was on Wednesday, it would show this one file from this one thing. So that stuff definitely happens, and it
is not a virus and can be fixed.
so much to track down. That is interesting that they were even able to find that out. I think
it sounds like the radios were all stuck on the same channel.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they started
brilliant
kind of putting things together, and they found out.
Does it say exactly how they did that?
I left a lot of the specifics out because I don't need to make a bigger deal about it.
Sure.
This is publicized, so I could have told more details, but I just think that it's interesting because that would be almost impossible to happen over the typical AM and FM signal, right? Before digital radio?
RDS exists, which is where it says the name of and that's not necessarily HD or digital, but I guess it must be digital because it comes in.
It almost has to be at that
Yeah.
point, doesn't it?
But that is older technology than HD for sure. So I don't know. That's a good something else to worry about. Thanks a lot, Shannon.
Yeah, but I've been camping on that story because I figured the time would be appropriate. We'd have a little time to talk about it. I knew you guys would be interested in it.
That'll do it for another hour of the Under the Hood Show. Until next time, you can find us at underthehoodshow.com. Check out, if you like the show, you can watch it too on our YouTube channel. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivants. For Russ Evans, Shannon Nordstrom, I'm Chris Carter. Thanks for joining us on the Under the Hood Show. All right, that is it for the Under the Hood Show. As far as the after show, we have stuff to do. We're busy, so.
So are we going to big time our audience like Eric Church did to his?
Oh, man.
What happened there?
Oh, you haven't heard about this yet?
No.
You got to live a little bit in the sports genre, and I know you're not always there all the time. But
Or the country music
Yeah.
genre.
I know Eric Church.
Yeah,
Not
no,
personally.
okay,
but-
there's a big deal happening this weekend.
Mhm.
If you're in sports, it's a really big deal. For the first time ever, University of North Carolina and Duke are playing each other in the first semifinal game of the Final Four.
Yeah.
Coach K's last game could be coached if they lose. And potentially it could be the game that springboards Coach K to a national championship game in his final year of coaching. Which
Either way,
it's a big deal.
Right.
And the last coach that did that coached their team to a championship in their year of retirement, legendary coach, would have been John Wooden. So it's a pretty big deal.
Which he was just winning them all, so that's not that big a deal.
You could
He
say
just had to
that.
pick the year to stop.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. For Coach K, this team was good, but nobody really thought it was as good enough to get all the way. The odds makers didn't have Duke as one of the favorites, but they're definitely a good team. Duke's always got a good team.
all the way.
So Eric Church is a big fan. He canceled a concert in San Antonio Saturday because he's told his fans, I'm going to the Final Four to watch this game. And so he kind of big-timed his fans, and there's a fair amount of backlash.
Oh, yeah, a fair amount? I imagine I'd be angry.
Yeah, and they said, well, your tickets will get refunded, but that doesn't, just think of the people that plan to go to an event like that. They fly into town. They've got airline tickets, hotel rooms.
I was having this discussion with somebody, and they said, well, this is a pretty historic big day. If you're a basketball fan, if you're a Duke fan, this is a pretty important deal if you're a fan. So I can understand him canceling a show to do this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And I said, yeah, like if you're going to an Eric Church
You
concert
hit it right
in
on
San
the head.
Antonio.
That's what I was going to
It's
say.
a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
For my niece, if she was going to go to, her going to see Eric Church would be as big of a deal as Eric
Right.
Church going to see that basketball game. It's just at a different level.
That could really hurt him because the people that don't care about sports are going to be mad. I mean,
Well, but here's the thing. The concert was probably sold out. If he loses 10% of the audience and comes back, he's going to be fine.
I think he should just redo it for free. Give everybody their money back, but their tickets are still good. And then
Just do a
it
free
still
show?
wouldn't help a lot of people because a lot of people travel and
You have
but
a good PR move.
You're right, Chris. There's definitely people who bought non-refundable airline
Yeah.
tickets and hotel rooms thinking there's no way he's going to cancel unless he gets sick. If he got sick or his mother died or something, I can see where people would be like, oh, I feel so bad for you. But this, I mean.
I like that he didn't lie about it.
Oh, I don't. I would have lied.
You can't lie because they're going to pan him in the crowd.
They're going to
Oh,
show
you
him.
say something.
There's
you
a good
say,
chance they pan him in the crowd.
Yeah, you say your grandma died, and then you go, oh, and while I was here, I happened to be able to go.
Oh, that's disingenuous. I would have owned it too,
That's
but
what
I
I
would have
would
thought
do.
of something
which,
for my fans.
which is worth canceling on your fans like that or getting up on stage and hitting somebody in the face? You know, I mean.
Well, if you want to go there, since we're talking about pop culture matters, everybody's got an opinion on that. I don't know.
Well, when the leadoff for the national news of the hour, instead of being the war or the economy, is that, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I happened to be watching it live. I never watched.
wow.
I was doing an operation procedure on our gas grill, and we got a TV right there in the kitchen. So I had flipped channels, and so I had the gas, not the actual gas grill, the gas cooktop.
Okay.
And
I
so
was like,
I have to take that apart and put a micro switch in it because for my wife thinks it's been years, but it's only been about
It's coming.
It's been
I'd
about
hire
7
someone.
months.
maybe tires.
Get some fake eyebrows.
I couldn't figure out how to get this thing apart, and it's been.
Oh, that's even worse.
So I did get motivated enough to do this, but that's what I had on, and so I'm watching it, and I heard the joke, and Chris Rock was on it. Oh, this could be interesting because he's always got something to say, and then it went to like 20 seconds of just silence,
Yeah.
and then they're showing Will Smith in the audience, and you can see his mouth moving big. So of course I'm a Twitter head, and I get onto Twitter right away, and it didn't take long for the Australian stream to be on because I thought it was a bit. I thought it was they were doing a bit.
But you would just come into a.
There would have been no dead air if it was a bit.
Right, but then when I saw the Australian version of what Will Smith was yelling and the veracity that he was yelling at, I'm like, ooh,
What
that
happened?
was just real.
Yeah.
That was just real. Oh my goodness, that just happened. And I was like, that is so wrong. And I out of this whole deal, it's been interesting to see the takes of different people in Hollywood and different things. But Jim Carrey happened to be on getting interviewed on CBS Morning News for his new Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And if you get
That
a
looks
chance,
good.
if you get a chance, go find that interview on YouTube. I thought Jim Carrey had the best take that I've heard for somebody that is in that world.
Tim Allen came
Tim
up
Allen
too.
was too. I heard that.
I was like,
but Jim Carrey's like, he goes, basically it's ridiculous, and Hollywood is spineless for applauding this guy just that much longer after he just got up and assaulted a man. And he said Chris Rock should sue him for $200 million is what Jim Carrey said, which when you're millionaires playing with millionaires, maybe it's not such a big deal. You know.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I invite him if he wants to come in here while we're live on YouTube and slap me in the face. I would love that. That would be awesome.
You're all for that?
No liability, nothing. You just come on in and I'll just let it run on YouTube.
And you can slap me in the face.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris Rock's got
both
comedy
sides.
gold for the next.
Chris Rock can come
whatever.
do that. Come on.
Oh, it's crazy. What's your take on this?
I think I will say I think that after it happened, the word is that the Oscars said you have to leave.
That's what they're saying now.
And then
I
he
think.
refused. Here's what I think happened. You have to leave. He said he doesn't want to leave. It's okay. He's going to win in 10 minutes. We got to just have him sit down. We'll deal with this later.
That would have been the best punishment they could give him is not let him accept his award.
Yeah,
he
just
earned the award.
You want it, but
I mean, my wife and I watched the movie.
Yeah.
He did a great job in that movie.
We're going to give it to you, later like you weren't here. What?
And I was so confused by his acceptance speech.
Oh,
on
that
the
was
other
odd.
hand,
I did not know what he was crying about, the award or the punch or the, and I didn't know if the protecting the family was about Serena and Venus, and how do you think they feel? This is their big moment for a movie that they authorized about their family, and it's just shrouded by this. Ridiculous.
it overshadowed everything.
Ridiculous.
And I think after I said that about the Oscars, what do you do? I mean, if you're the producer, if you're the director, whatever it is, if you're that entity, what do you do? Just like when they announce the wrong winner,
Yeah.
we don't have a contingency
Live, they
plan
can't
for
just,
this.
like,
We don't.
Go back.
Did anybody get a chance to even think that the Best Picture winner was the first time that it's ever been won by a non-big studio? Apple TV made it was their show.
Oh, yeah.
That won
Didn't
Best
even-
Picture. First time ever
Yeah.
that a stream content show like that won a Best Picture, they said.
I haven't seen
Nobody's
that
talking
movie
about
either.
it.
Have you seen that movie?
No, I don't usually see much of the Oscar-nominated movies, but we happened to be clicking one night and we watched the King Richard movie. That was,
Can
that
I
was good.
slap you? I mean, just
It's not going to work that well.
well, no, but let's try it. Let's start with me.
Can I slap you back?
No.
Why not?
Well, didn't we just talk about boxing last week?
We need you on the show next week.
How'd that start? How'd that conversation start? We talked
I don't
about.
remember.
How did that start? We talked about standing here.
Standing up on the.
But what
on
was the reason why we were
table.
talking about that?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Was it about getting Tammy said, my wife was filling in call screening, and she said maybe instead of a race game, we need to have one of those boxing games.
Yeah.
And then we morphed it into like Rock'em Sock'em or standing on the table and just,
Going
putting on
for
big
it.
gloves or what it might happen to be.
Hey, if
Sock
you,
'em boppers. Get the inflatable gloves. It's fantastic.
if you're listening to the show on podcast, we really appreciate when you rate the show and the whole thing. But
Subscribe.
here's a note about rating and subscribing. If you're
tell.
tuning in right now, and you've only been tuned in for, because we'll put this on the podcast now and then. If you're listening to this and you've been listening for the last 5 minutes, don't write a review that says, well, this show is stupid. I listened to him talk about Will Smith for 10 minutes. This isn't even an automotive show. I have seen reviews like that. We had one about said talking about Shannon's hair. We had one talking about Russ talking about something that's like, it's not even automotive related. It's like, well, you're a moron if you're listening to any podcast for like 5 minutes and it's not about what the title is and you write a review about it. You know, it's crazy how many people out there just write reviews about stuff places they've never been, about things they've never listened to. I don't write very many reviews, one now and then, and when I do, I would feel bad. I was like, wait a second, I got to know more about what I'm
You know
watching
why they
or
do that,
listening
right?
to, because they can.
No, because they're narcissistic and they want people to come attention back to them.
But you can't write back on a lot of these
No, but
reviews.
they know that they're getting out there and having an audience.
Probably.
You know, that's their way of doing it.
But
And if it was just normal, it wouldn't stand out. So
we do thank the hundreds of you that have taken the time to write a review, because a lot of them are really good. I mean, they've not just put a 5-star. They write down, you know, hey, I like these guys, whatever. That means a lot to us, because we come in and do the show and it's fun and we enjoy.
I'm going to go off content again because that is so important. But we just got to learn to deal with that, Russ, because it's going to happen. You watch Twitter, Facebook. How many times somebody will comment on something and they're like, "You didn't read the article, did you?"
Oh, geez.
How many times does that happen?
Mhm.
You know, there's a gotcha headline and then you go in and read the story and it's nowhere close, and people have made a whole thesis on what they thought the article was about. They're not even close. I just laugh.
Eric Church, that just came up the other day for
I
us.
watch YouTube videos, a lot of them, as I'm going through trying to figure out how do we grow our channel. And I watch and I see a title and I say, what are they talking about? Lately, it's been like about the war. It's like, I saw this happen in the war. And then I watch the whole video because I figure it's 8 minutes long. I'll watch it. And there's zero mention through the whole thing. But if you read the comments after, there's a bunch of comments about the title. Like going, oh, yeah, I saw that too. It was crazy. Those poor people and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. There was nothing in there. It was like a video about how to change your tire. It had nothing to do with a war. Why are you putting that and pictures in there? To get people to come watch your
Eric
channel.
Church, what'd you guys say? We better wrap this up. You're going to say Eric Church that you just talked about?
No,
that?
yeah, just the same
just
thing.
what we just talked
comment.
about.
Yeah. Just the
This
same.
is the after party, not
just
under
the
hood
comments not related to the actual news at all. Just what they thought they might think it could be about if they read the article, but they didn't.
So when we're talking about something non-automotive, like partway through it, we got to say, and they did this automotive, and they did this automotive. We just got to throw that in every once in a while just to keep on track.
Yeah,
if we want to talk about something else ever, because we do talk about other things.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be really bored if my
Especially
whole life was
the
just
after show.
automotive.
The after show is a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Even when we start with the after show's not going to be very long because we have stuff
Do you know
to
what
do.
we're missing right now?
What?
Brats and burgers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, we got a special award for the staff going on. Every 120 days that we go without a reportable safety incident, which seems like, it should be longer than that. But we're talking about, we get into some times where we cut fingers and things happen. And
I was just going to say, when brats are scheduled for Thursday, on Tuesday, they're like, no, I'm good. I'm fine.
May have happened.
Yeah. Oh, I'm good. I'm just going to rub some dirt on it.
I want to tell you guys this, in love. I scheduled it on Thursday for you.
Thank you. I've noticed the last few have all worked out.
I hope nobody else is listening right now, but it's for you guys. I love you. It's for you.
Thanks.
Be safe.
All
They're
right.
not listening. They're down there eating.
All right. That's it. That's the after show. Thanks, everybody, for hanging with us and nice reviews, and don't get slapped.